When, like with Pontius Pilate, we make decisions based on popular opinion. When we make decisions based on what the people around us want us to do. Shortly before the time of Jesus, the Romans coined a phrase, vox populi, vox Dei. Simply put, vox populi, vox Dei means the voice of the people is the voice of God. And even today, some 2,000 years after the Romans invented that saying, we still tend to believe those words, that the voice of the people is the voice of God. We show that belief in the way that we govern ourselves at the federal level and likewise at the state and local levels. Rarely do you find leaders struggling to figure out what's the right thing to do. Instead, more often than not, what you find leaders consumed with is just one thing. What do the opinion polls say? And if a majority have a certain opinion, many leaders figure, well, that's what they should go along with. After all, they figure, the voice of the people is the voice of God. But in the Holy Week story, we encounter yet one more person who made a decision. And that person is Jesus. And Jesus made his decision not based on greed, not based on playing it safe, not based on popular opinion. No, Jesus made his decision based on what it is that God wanted him to do. We need to realize that not only was Jesus fully divine, but he was also fully human. And as a human, Jesus did not want to die. And so there in the Garden of Gethsemane, as Jesus prayed, he asked God, he begged God that if there was some way he could do God's will without having to die on the cross, that might happen. But in the end, he prayed that no matter what, that God's will be done. And in the same way, in the Apostle Paul's letter to the Philippians that we heard here today, Paul urges that the same mind that was in Jesus might also be in each of us. That just as Jesus' mind was set above all else on doing God's will in his life, that deciding to do God's will in our lives might be our highest priority. An ancient Christian who lived in the deserts of Egypt, named Isidore the priest, once said, of all the evil suggestions, the most terrible is the prompting to follow your own heart. Do you hear what he was saying? According to that ancient Christian leader, the worst thing that we can do with our lives is to just follow our own hearts, to just do what we feel like doing. By saying that, his point was to remind us that when we go to make decisions in life, we shouldn't just decide based on what we feel like doing at the moment, but instead we should decide based on what it is that God would have us do. Are we willing to have the same mind, the same mindset in us that was in Jesus? If so, then we need to resist the temptation to make decisions based on greed, or based on playing it safe, or based on popular opinion. And instead, if we want to have the same mind, the same mindset in us that was in Jesus, then we need to be willing to pray like Jesus did, and to take the risk of praying, God, thy will be done. God, help us to make the right choices and the right decisions so that your will might be done in our